Good morning, good morning, good morning to you all. My name is Ruthie the Truth. I am your financial wellness coach and your number one strategist for goal-driven planning. So today we are continuing the series of mental health awareness. And today I will be interviewing the one and only, I call her Ma, but I will let her introduce herself. And I wanted to expound upon how mental health awareness is important and how to navigate some of the traumatic challenges or traumatic events that you may have gone through in life, and get through them and wake up to see another day and wake up to operate and function to the best of your abilities. So with that said, Ma, can you briefly introduce yourself and maybe share with us one of your most traumatic events that may have happened in your life with the viewers?
Good morning. Good morning, daughter. Good morning, everyone. My name is Margaret Arsenic, and Moss is short for Margaret Arsenic, and I am here with my daughter to be her greatest support system. And it's very important to have someone to support you in the things that you do, especially when it's your mom. So this is what I'm doing. I'm giving her my support. And to get to the topic at hand, I have had a few traumatic experiences, but the one that was the most traumatic was 9/11. I'm a survivor of 9/11. I was right in the heart of the planes hitting the building and the buildings coming down. I really don't talk about it much because it has been so traumatic to me, even though it's over 20 years ago. But even 20 years ago, sometimes it seems like it was just yesterday. And the experience was, at one part, was to just kind of ignore it and hope that it went away. But that didn't happen. And when it was at the time that the planes hit the building and people was jumping out of the windows and, a lot of things that was happening at that time, all I could think about was, was my children safe, even though they were home, but still it was so traumatic. I just was trying to find a way to call to find out if my children were okay. And foremost, I just was calling on the Lord to help me to get through that day. Sometimes it's a little emotional talking about it, but still today, I kind of have like a little anxiety when I hear like the helicopters go overhead, because that was like one of the main things that was happening in that particular time frame, is that these helicopters was just circling around. And sometimes they do that around where I live, and it makes me a little uneasy and it's stressful. But, I kind of calm myself down and, try to convince myself that this is not 9/11. It's a little hard because it is, kind of stressful to kind of put that behind you. But it was very devastating day. A lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people were hurt. And thank God that I was not one of those folks that was physically hurt, killed, or maimed. So I thank God for that. God, he's my all in all. And I tell anyone, even someone who doesn't believe in God, I tell them, listen, God is the man, and you have to trust in him no matter what. God allows a lot of things to happen so you can either believe in him or strengthen your faith in him. So that was like one of the most traumatic things that happened.
Actually, I don't think many people really know, but a bit of that traumatized me because we were literally at the top of the Twin Towers days before that event.
Yes.
I remember you taking us, me, Drea, Sade. It was the four of us, right?
And Calvin.
Oh, and Calvin, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I remember you taking time off. And like as a child, you always want your parents to be there and do things with you and for you. And me, I'm like Dora the Explorer. I've been like that even as a child, so that was like one of the best days that I remember in my childhood of you taking that time out to bring us into the city. And we did the boat ride by the South Street Seaport. And one of the excursions were going up to, I don't know, was it the Empire State Building too? Or no, it was just the
No,
Twin Towers.
the Twin Towers, yeah.
Right.
And we went to the museum.
Right.
The
Okay,
Indian
yeah, because I
Museum.
know there was another excursion. Right. And so like, I was so excited, and we did everything, did all of this, right? So this was like the very last memory I had of the Twin Towers, and I was in the 6th grade, and I was in TV class. And I thought, when the teacher explained about the World Trade Center and put the news on for us to watch, well, actually, I think it was really for her to watch, because I think she might have had somebody that was there. I thought it was a part of the TV assignment that we had. Like sometimes they do a pop quiz or something like that. I thought it was a pop quiz or something to that effect, because it looks like a movie.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, a lot of ironic things happen to me in my life, even now. Like I tell people, serendipity is like my superpower. But at that time, it really shook me inside. And, I guess I kind of have that trait like you. Like, I don't really like to expose a lot of what's going on with me internally. And I'm working on that this year, because I realize that it's very necessary to speak.
Yes.
Sometimes you speak to the wrong people and your stuff gets out in the wrong ways, and, whatever. But such is life. These are things that are going to happen inevitably. Anything, no weapon formed against you will ever prosper at the end of the day. So yeah, so to get back to that, the teacher put on the news. The smoke was coming out of one of the buildings at that time. I believe by the time she put it on, it was before the second plane hit. And all I could think of was you. And so I'm like, oh my God, my mom works in the city. Like, where is she? And not only that, I remember a lot of people could not get in touch with anybody because of the towers and the signal, the phone signals. And at that time, I didn't have a cell phone. You only had gave me a beeper. So I'm like looking to see, like, okay, am I going to get a beep? Like, nothing. There was nothing. And I was just so nervous, and everybody else in the school was nervous, because this was like first thing in the morning. I think it was like third period or something like that. It was the beginning of the school day before lunch. And so this was like the buzz the whole time. And then as I guess information was getting through, and some of the kids that did have cell phones, they, were getting information about their loved ones or whoever, there was just a lot of sadness, kids just randomly, they're crying. It seemed random to me. And, I started having that emotional response too, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to see my mom. I don't know what's happening. They're not, like everything is just happening. And it was relieving to finally see you when you did get back home. And, you know, it is an emotional topic because I can't even imagine what life would have been like if you hadn't made it back home.
Yeah.
You know, and then just hearing I was just in a state of shock because I still like I didn't believe it. I thought like, okay, I saw this in TV class, so I processed this as a TV like I have this class tomorrow, and we're gonna follow up, and it's gonna be gonna be a continuation of our assignment for my TV class, and it wasn't. And you know, as a child, I felt so helpless because I didn't know what I could do. Like there was nothing to do. And it's like, oh man, well, I've always been a child where from young, you know, you tell me the stories all the time, how independent I was and how I'm just always proactive in doing stuff and knowing stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle even going back to school and consoling my friends that lost their relatives in 9/11. A lot of them, so the school that I've went to is actually named after a police officer. So a lot of those children in that school, their parents, aunts, uncles, relatives are either NYPD or FDNY, like they are first responders.
Right.
And a lot of them lost their relatives. They found out and it was very traumatic. I still like sometimes I kind of felt like I blanked out because we really didn't know how to react. And then as time progressed, there was a lot of hatred going on towards the Muslim students.
Community, yes.
And I had a couple of Muslim friends that feared for their life to even go back into school to wear head coverings and whatnot because they were getting death threats. Like even at that time, this is before social media was really a thing. I mean, I think there was MySpace at that time, but
yeah,
you know, it was a lot. And so to see you go through the changes as well, because, you know, you obviously being at ground zero and having to return back to the city and that site, everything, all of the pollution and inhaling all of the fumes and all of the air pollutants.
Yes.
And so if you could go into that and like just the aftermath of 9/11 for you.
Well, the aftermath of 9/11 was after I went back to work, I did wind up having cancer of my throat because of 9/11. It started out as just a little lump. And then as time progressed, it became a mass in my thyroid area, and I had to have the whole thing removed. And I do suffer from asthma from 9/11. And, you know, there's other illnesses that I have from it. But what I wanted to say was that when I had to go back to 9/11, go back to work in Manhattan, it was like the most eeriest thing that I have ever encountered. It was like being in the twilight zone going back to work. When I got on the boat, because I was an essential worker, first responder, getting on the boat, there was no people other than the people that work on a boat, firefighters, few police officers, and that was it. So it was like I was on a boat semi to myself because everybody was spread all over the place. So it didn't feel like I was really going to work. And then when I got to the other side, it was a bunch of tents, white tents, people walking around in white suits. the air was so thick with the stench of death and fuel, and it was really traumatizing. The whole thing really didn't sink into my brain that that whole day even happened until at least, I'm going to say at least 6 months later, that I really realized how much danger I was in. And not only that, is that when it was happening, going back a little bit, when it was happening, I was helping people inside to get inside the building for safety. And when I stepped out, one of the porthole windows, you know, when you're in the plane and you look out that window, one of those windows fell directly in front of me. Only by the grace of God, had I took a step forward, I probably would not be here to tell you the story. But that was like the most scariest thing. When the buildings came down, I turned around. All I could see was just a puff of smoke following me up the block. I ran like there was no tomorrow to try to get out of the path of the smoke coming up Park Avenue. I ducked inside one of the streets, and then I seen it just go right past me. But it was just like something from one of the movies. It just didn't seem real. And emotionally, it has an effect on me. I didn't think that it would have that much effect. But as time goes on, and as I get older, and as I really, really sit down and really think about, you know, how good God has been to let me survive that, I just, you know, it's just a lot. It's a lot to think about, you know, and sometimes I do have, you know, sleepless nights because sometimes it still comes back, but I put my faith in God and I let God handle it for me. And that, you know, that's kind of my way of dealing with, you know, the mental stress that goes on when things happen to you traumatically, because sometimes you don't realize how deep you feel. You don't realize how much it affects you until maybe years later. You just don't know. And my way of coping is to have that faith the size of a mustard seed. And when I ask God to help me to get through the things that I need to get through emotionally, it helps. He helps me to come through it. So, you know, I would recommend that people turn to God and ask him for help. If you don't ask, you don't get. So you have to ask. And for those who are really struggling and feel like God is not there to help you through whatever you're going through, just have patience and just keep praying, because he will put people in your path. He'll put people in your path that will help you to deal with whatever you're going through. You know, when I was working, I would be on the bus traveling from one area to the next area. And out of the clear blue sky, there would be people that just be somebody that would just come up to me and just say, you know, there's something special about you. And then the next thing I know, they disappear and I never see them again. And it just, it's like, you know, because I have faith in God and I know God, I know that these things could happen, but I didn't think it would happen to me. So, you know, when you're going through a crisis, God is the way to go. You pick up a bottle, you drink, and all you do is destroy your body. Smoke weed, take drugs, you destroy God's temple, and it still doesn't solve your problem. It just creates more problems on top of the ones that you have. And then you don't know how to deal with that, because now that becomes an issue to kind of get away from drinking and smoking and getting high. When you're high, you're fuzzy and you still can't deal with whatever's going on. So the main thing is just to deal with whatever's going on in your life and just ask God to see you through it.
Yes, I know a lot of times, and especially for a lot of people who may not necessarily believe in God, they tend to turn to people, friends, family, community members for the answers and for support, which, like you said, from time to time you can speak, have a person that you can speak to about whatever it is that you're going through to get past your trauma or just your situation. But I think that's very important what you said, to have a spiritual connection and to develop a spiritual connection with the higher power, because us human beings, we cannot do everything. We were not designed to do everything.
No.
Not and at all. Yeah, I think it's very important that you just echoed that. Donnie McClurkin's song says, after you've done all you can, you just stand. And, he refers to standing on the power of God. Because that's who you have ultimately. This is your creator. So obviously your creator knows everything there is to know about you. People, family, friends. I mean, some of them, they can be around you long enough to find out and figure out certain things about you. But as you go through life, like you were saying, day after day, year after year, decade after decade, you are becoming a new version of yourself. Right. Just like I don't know, you're not an iPhone person, Androids. I'm sure Androids have the same updates, but but even your phones, you can have your phone for years, but it's never gonna function the same exact way as day one.
Right. True.
And so every now and again, you need that update. And I kind of think that God, prayer, and sometimes even praying and fasting, I know for me that works a lot, is like that update that you need. And, obviously there are developers that come up with this update, like community leaders, like, church or just people, family, friends, or whatever. That's the team. But ultimately that update comes from you getting that connection solid with God or your creator, right, however people refer to God, because they have all different names and references and what have you. So I think that was really good. I had more questions, but you pretty much answered it all in that one shot.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I pray, I hope and pray that someone, if I could just touch somebody, then that means that my living is not in vain. For someone to realize that they're not alone. No matter how much they feel like they're alone, they're not alone. God is always on the throne. Even those who don't believe, there's a reason why they don't believe. And like I said, God always puts people in your path. Because I know a few people who said that they didn't believe in God, but when things happen to them, that's the first name they call on. So you have to believe that God exists. So, as long as you know that God exists and you know that God can do things for you, all you got to do is just trust in him. Trust and believe.
Right. Man, this was deep. I didn't expect to cry, but it happens.
Yeah, it does.
So one of my final questions before we do the official wrap up is in regards to the importance of finance, right? So as a financial wellness coach, I always try to make the connection between these situations or topics and finance. So when it comes to financial support, or just the steps that a person can take to address their mental health crisis, what would you say the financial steps should be, as far as, like, for example, them seeking out a therapist, right? I spoke with someone that said they had PTSD. They went to go to a therapist and they couldn't afford a therapist.
Yes.
Right. And I think that they agreed at the end of it all, because, you know, I've done medical coding, and so I've seen the billing part of how these things work, and how health insurance does cover once you have a certain type of health insurance, or, you know, sometimes you do have to shop around, just like you go to the supermarket.
Yeah,
you don't
like
stay at the
everything else.
same one. Every now and
Yeah.
then you go to Costco, BJ's, Walmart, Target, you know, got to switch it up from time to time. But just as far as them taking the steps towards getting that support from the professionals when it comes to mental health.
They have hotlines for mental health that will give you that support. So they have those things. And sometimes, even if you can't get to them, just think of how can I put it? I know that finance has a lot to do with a lot of stress with folks, with myself. Because if you don't have the finance to pay the bills, get to where you need to go, and you don't have that support, yes, it will definitely stress you out even more than life itself. But I think the point of being involved with a program like yours is that you educate folks, you educate us on how we can get our finances together, keep our finances together, so we won't have to fall in that category of becoming depressed because of finances. Our credit is like the ultimate, because this is what we're living by these days. This is like the main function these days. And if we as parents and as adults, if we could get our finances together, then we could teach our children how to get their finances together, so they won't have the same struggle mentally or emotionally. And I think being in a program where you can learn the techniques of taking care of your finances and keeping up with how you use your money, I think is very helpful. And maybe some folks will not be so depressed and burdened.
Right. Yeah. And when it came to 9/11, you know, just to back up a little bit, did they offer you any services or support, as far as, I know you said, you know, you had ended up developing cancer from being at ground zero. Were there any follow-ups that either you had taken part of or that were available to people? Because maybe there may be some people, even after 20 years, that have been through ground zero, you know, that experience just like you have, and maybe they were presented the resources and just never had the encouragement to know whether or not they even worked, or whether or not it was something that fit for them. What was that like for you after 9/11?
Well, with my job itself, it took them at least 6, 8 to 9 months to figure out that we needed to have some kind of therapy because of the traumatic event. But the World Trade Center registry, they're terrific. They're great. They have counseling in the World Trade Center registry that is free to those who need it. They have medical that is free to us who need it. So if you was down there, and whether you didn't work, but if you was down there at the World Trade Center and you need to have someone to talk to, someone to help you through any crisis that you may still be feeling, any medical issues that you might be having, the World Trade Center registry is the place to go. You don't have to pay for your medicines as long as it's dealing with the medical problems from the World Trade Center. They're great. And they help you to do a lot of things. They help you emotionally, they help you financially, because they have lawyers that help you to recover some money, but you have to file. You have to get in touch with the World Trade Center, and you have to file for these things. And they will help you tremendously. That's basically what I can just tell you, is that the nurses, the doctors, they're great. They have like some of the universities, they get involved and they have you do surveys. And when you do some of the universities, when you do these surveys, you know, they send you an appreciation token. But that is to help them to understand how people are going through their crisis years after 9/11. And I've been involved with all the programs that I could, you know, to help me to deal with going through the World Trade Center issue.
This is very powerful, I'll be honest with you. And I really hope that this episode at least helps one person. I feel like even if one person that may be going through a financial hardship because they did not know about the information that you just provided for the world to take part of, and especially those that were there at the World Trade Center that may have medical conditions, going through things alone by themselves, not even realizing that their finances don't even have to be strained because there are coverages that are available to them because of their qualifications from being down at ground zero.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this was great. Thank you so much, Ma.
You're so welcome.
I really hope, hey y'all, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please do not hesitate to drop it in the comment box below. We are here for you. And anything that you have, even if you were a part of being at ground zero yourself and you're watching this episode and you have additional resources that maybe could help the next person decades after this super traumatic event, feel free to drop it in the comments. I will definitely get those links for the hotlines. Free hotlines do not have a cost to help our community.
Yes.
You know, and with that said, I know you mentioned before our podcasting session, just before I recorded, that music is a part of your outlet when it comes to mental health, or just, you know, staying uplifted. So with that said, Ma, and you know, I know the people don't know yet, But I know that even beyond your surgeries, your throat surgery, that your voice is one of your most powerful God-given gifts. And obviously, God still got your voice intact because he knows that, that's how you be blessing people. So one of the songs that I remember you telling me when it comes to just keeping yourself uplifted. I know you had a few, there's a list. But I think one of your most favorite songs was His Eyes on the Sparrow, I believe. With Lauryn Hill. But the Lauryn Hill version, because there's so many different versions. But would you, I know, I'm sorry, I want to put you on the spot like that. But just, one time, just for the people, because I want them to be able to see the miracle that you're a living miracle right now, like straight up. And so if you could just bless the audience with a couple of la 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 la,
I have to give you the short version.
Okay, all right.
Go. Why should I feel discouraged? And why should the shadows go? And why should my heart be lonely, alone from this heavenly home? When Jesus is my portion, a constant friend is he. His eyes is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me.
So much for your time, for your voice, for your story, most importantly, and for those resources, the feedback of the resources that you have applied in your life, and for your supports when it comes to dealing with traumatic events and the healing process, most importantly, of those traumatic events. I pray that this episode blesses more than one person, definitely. But I can't wait to see the comments of how this has helped the viewers.
Me too. Yes. It was a pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on your podcast. And I hope to come back again. So to everyone out there, stay encouraged, be encouraged. God's got you.
Great. All right, everybody. Yes, absolutely. Obviously, God has given her this gift to bless others. And despite the traumatic event that she faced, being a cancer survivor and us going through that process as a family, it definitely takes its toll. But we are yet here. We are yet striving and thriving by the grace of God. So,
amen.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
To learn more about the resources shared during this episode, visit ruthietruth.com/resources or click the links in the description box below.